Dr. Jack Kileba is representing the Kenya Association of the Pharmaceutical Industry. He's here with us in the studio. Good morning, Daktari.
Good morning, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Karibu sana. That's the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Yeah, quite a situation here.
Yeah. No, it's peace-loving, and we look at having good camaraderie when doctors are in the room. We look at how we can then get free service because
free services because the way things are going.
Or you go to a hospital and you know a doctor, so you call in advance. Daktari.
I'm coming to your joint.
Ninaletwa kwako. Good to have you on the show. Let's start with the Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry. What's that?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So the Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry is an association of like-minded manufacturers and distributors of medicines who have come together for a common purpose to serve the people of Kenya in various ways. These ways include manufacturing of medicines, distributing them, and ensuring that they are available for everyone who needs them. Yeah, so this is an organization that looks at Kenya as a whole with the sole purpose of providing medicines to the citizens.
So it's the manufacturers and the distributors?
Yes.
Okay. Does it have other membership from now, the practitioners, those that dispense the medicine?
Yeah, so those who dispense and use the medicine as well as the patients are key partners or key stakeholders to this association. So we work very, very closely because our goal is the same, serving the patients. So we find lots of touch points that you have commonalities. And for that reason, and I'll be telling you later how we are collaborating, and we want to take this collaboration further because our purpose is the same.
Okay. Big Pharma has been accused all over the world that Big Pharma, you are the ones who know what you are. You do a lot of work in research and development of various drugs. But then also Big Pharma has been accused of taking advantage of patients in very many instances. Let's just deal with the negatives out of the way first so we can then move.
Yeah, Eric, I've seen that also in the media once in a while. But I think Pharma was vindicated during COVID-19 because they came in to produce vaccines within record time. They were able to demonstrate what they do every single day. It was able to be demonstrated the kind of effort that goes into this, how costly these processes are. So in a way that has been vindicated to an extent, but there have been also bad players in some part of the world, one time or another. And these things are expected in every industry. Once in a while, you'll have bad apples. But I want to say, really, if you look at it in the broader context, pharma has contributed significantly, even to human development and ensuring that people live healthier, longer lives. And really, the advancement in terms of even life expectancy that you've seen is due to the advancement in medicine, which pharma is really part of course, together with other stakeholders, including doctors and nurses and everyone else.
Okay, so how does that play out here? On the local market now, seeing that, there are many, many conversations currently going on in terms of, medicines coming from Big Pharma then being pushed on the local market. There are those other, organizations who are making medicine that people can also partake of when we come to the originals versus generic. Those conversations are playing out on the local scene as well. Is it possible to have a balance between the two? Is it recommended? Because then it does seem as though there is a huge influence that then is played by Big Pharma on the local scene, whereby people can still benefit from generic medicine, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I think no one really opposes that. I think it is good for our country as an industry, as a pharma industry as a whole. I think there's room for everyone because what I can understand is, or make you understand is how the process of getting medicine to the patients comes about. One is the intense research that goes into it to produce a new molecule. So really, usually the innovator companies are the ones who do this because it's really heavy investment that goes into this. And the failure rate is very, very high. For every one molecule that succeeds, 99 others have failed. And there's investment that goes into those 99 others that have failed. So usually the arrangement that is in the industry globally is a process where the innovator makes the original, but then after a certain time, then this is opened up for all the generics to come in. So there's really no problem at all. There's a room for everyone.
Okay. The conversation at hand at the moment, though, is that there has been the use of persuasion, let's call it that. Persuasion for medical practitioners to use particular medications or pharmaceutical interventions in their practice or in public hospital, private practice, and they come as gifts to practitioners such as yourselves in many shapes and form. And then the use of them is proliferated by virtue of the fact that these gifts have come. It's known. I think it's a global phenomenon. It happens. It happens everywhere. But now
there's a certain type of antibiotic that you're most likely going to be.
Yes. Or when we find that there is a
prescribed for.
trend that if you've taken your child, for example, to hospital in the last 3 months, you will find that it is a particular drug that is being used, or there is a particular painkiller that is being used, or suddenly there is a new medicine on the market that when people are going into hospital, it's being used. It would then lend to this phenomenon that medical practitioners are being persuaded, I don't want to use the word bribed, to use these medications, and it comes in the form of gifting. Has that been the case?
Yeah, I will address that in different ways. So I think one is to clarify the position of the Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industries is that we do not offer any gifts to practitioners. In fact, most practitioners don't even want them because there's a conversation of, ethical promotion. So the position of CAPI is that, and for all the CAPI members, we have about 30 member companies. And for all these companies, the position is that this does not happen. However, it happens, as you're saying. It's correct. It happens in the, in the marketplace. And these are some of the practices that really shouldn't happen. For sure, the decision to prescribe or to recommend is that of the physician, of the nurse, or the clinic officer seeing you. They are professionals. They need to act in your best interest. Well, whereas just like all the other industries, promotion is part of the industry. Marketing promotion is really something that happens in all the industries, and the industry of pharma is not exempt from this. But then we're saying even if the promotion needs to take place, or rather inform people that you have these kind of offerings or products, then healthcare is a unique industry, and we need to have some boundaries beyond which we cannot go. And one of them is the aspect of gifts and any other kind of influence that is not accepted. So
there's a legal regime, Doctor, isn't there, that controls marketing of medical product, especially drugs, right? So that's why we don't see there's some types of medication that's available over the counter. Then we see advertisements for such on billboards and print and media and electronic media. But then there's some medication that you will not see being advertised. Same way we don't see doctors advertising their services. We don't see Dr. So-and-so come, I'm the best neurosurgeon in the country. There are regulations against that, aren't there?
They are there. Yes, the law is clear.
And what are the details of those regulations and the law?
Yeah, a good question. So medicines are classified in different categories. There are the over-the-counter medicines, for instance, multivitamins and some others. Yes, and that are out of over-the-counter. So those ones, the market is liberated in a way that you can advertise to the general public. But there are prescription medicine that you cannot advertise really to the public, but you can promote to the physicians, meaning educating them and letting them know what is the difference between this and the other one.
What is a specific letter of that law that talks about, okay, do not advertise to the general public, but you can communicate to the physician? This communication to the physician, does it leave a backdoor for advertisements in a different way?
Yeah, and that is some of the doors that we, as CAPI, or Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry, want to close, certain doors. As you know, the law prescribes the minimum standards, but then ethics usually is above that, because doing what is ethical is doing really beyond what the law says, because you're doing what is good and what is the right thing to do. And we've taken the route of self-regulation as an industry, whereby we've put the stakeholders together and said, hey, we need to check on each other. We need to have an ethical standard. And I'm happy to let you know that since 2019, CAPI has a code of ethics that all the member companies have to adhere to. And this code of ethics describes the relationship between the industry and the patients, between the industry and the physicians, between the industry and the government, between the industry and even the general public. So there is a standard of practice that we require of members, and it's really a high bar, honestly, because we're only second to South Africa to have launched this kind of code, and we are gaining traction because we want to extend this now to the entire healthcare stakeholder community, because we are planning to have a framework where we involve now many other stakeholders in the industry to also come and together and say, yes, there is an ethical standard we need to maintain. It is above what even the law prescribes, but we feel this is a special industry in the sense that we deal with lives every single day, and there is a level of ethical standard expected of us.
Okay, can we take a few steps back? That there was, even if there are these ethics and the standards through which then folks are going to be governed, right? There was the initial situation whereby it was felt that if you actually did approach people with this gifting, that they would be accepting of it, and then by virtue of that would then push it on the market. What do you think gave rise to that? Because it seems to be it should be a very cut and dry thing. Your medicine works, we go, but are we then looking at competition at a higher level that would then force local practitioners in the medical field then to be ready to take this in order to push a brand?
Yeah, and it's really the principles of marketing, whereby gifts can be used as a method of promotion. So I think when you speak to marketers, this is quite a standard practice in many sectors, really. Yeah, so I would say that is what pushed that initially, but also industries do learn with time, and that learnings have come, and people feel that that is not the road they want to walk. That is not ethical conduct that we want to practice. But what's wrong with
it? I'm sorry, I'm play the devil's advocate for a moment. What exactly is wrong with it?
Yeah,
if I want you to subscribe to SpiceFM and I come to your office and I give you a T-shirt and a pen and things like this, I'm just telling you, well, here's a little bit of something for you to remember me by, so that when you do touch that dial, it's going to go to 94.4. Do you get what I mean?
I'm just looking for top of mind awareness.
Exactly. So that I'm in your foresight.
Yeah, and there's nothing.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with that if it is SpiceFM. Nothing wrong with that if you're selling candy or sweets, right? But this is medicines, and this is an industry that you cannot look in the same light, because you're touching patient lives every single day. Your decision that you make affects so many people. So we wouldn't really walk that direction when it comes to healthcare. The same way doctors don't advertise on TV to say, I'm the best doctor.
Continuing the same devil's advocate line that Ndu has taken, Dr. I am a pharmaceutical practitioner. I have spent years of research looking for that one molecule. 99 have flopped. I got this one. All right. I have gone through the process of getting it registered and recognized. I've been allowed to take it to the market. Overall, I'm not allowed to go and tell every Tom, Dick and Harry that I have a new molecule and it cures you for this and the other. But I know that my stakeholder, the person that needs to know that this thing exists, is a physician. That physician who makes a decision on the prescription and the method of treatment will make a prescription based on what they know. How do I get them to know that there is this new product in the market and this is what it's good for and these are the dangers? How do I get them to know?
Yeah, and that is what we do every day. So the members of CAPI, or Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry, take a lot of time speaking with practitioners, educating them regarding the uses of the medicines they make, the safe use of the medicine, the side effects, so that they watch out for them, so that also patients are warned of certain side effects, because medicines do have side effects, so that when they notice this, then they report to their doctor. So we spend lots of time educating physicians doing all these things. And really the spend we could use in gifts, then that is the spend we transfer to actual meaningful education activities. And this is what we want to focus.
But then that's again. So I will not give you a gift, but I will sponsor you for a conference in Malindi or in Mar-a-Lago for a whole week. Or you're playing golf in the morning, and then in the afternoon, or vice versa. We're sitting in this conference, and I'm telling you about this medicine and what I went through to produce it, and these are the active ingredients, and this is how you can use it. And then thereafter, we go for a party. Is that where do you draw the ethics there? Someone can say, I mean, these guys took us to Mar-a-Lago, these other guys took us to Naivasha. And who's going to be top of mind?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Eric. But the members of CAPI do not do that. So, and it's good you bring it out, because we spell out what you've described.
You don't sponsor conferences out of town.
In locations that you mentioned. So, what's
other locations?
Okay.
Yeah, because locations also matter.
Okay.
Yeah, and in our ethical code, we look at on the issue of education for practitioners or sponsorship to attend conferences. That is perfectly okay to do that. But then locations also matter. The kind of hospitality offered matters. So we believe that it is education.
Does this code of practice put a cap on how much you can spend per physician in a sponsorship? Because that then would say, I mean, you can't take someone to Bora Bora for a week.
So maybe putting the spend cap may not be the most appropriate way, because that's a bit limiting. And as you understand, different towns, even in our country, different time, the costs are different in different towns. So it could be really difficult to do that. But we've put the principles, the guiding principles, because ethics, again, really has to be thinking about what is good and what is right. And it's not much of prescription really specifically, but giving the guidelines that allow us to do these things in ways that leave the autonomy of the physicians. And all this, we're doing all this for the interest of the patients, Eric.
Okay.
It's about the patient's safety at the end of the day. We want the patient to receive.
So what are the controls?
Yeah,
there's a code of practice that you've said, yes, has been developed by the industry, being spearheaded by CAPI. Now you want to spread it further to cover other stakeholders in the healthcare space, all right? And you're saying this code ensures the safety of the patient in the very end of it. So what are these caps? What are these limitations? Because if there are no limitations, then it's just paper.
Yeah. So there are limitations, and there are clear limitations. So for instance, I mentioned the industry or members of CAPI do not offer gifts, as I said, to any of the practitioners. We do not hold meetings or sponsor meetings in locations that are deemed to be luxurious.
And by gifts, what do we mean? No notebooks, no pens, no calendars,
any forms
no
of
branded merchandise?
Absolutely.
We see this in all hospitals that we've gone to, Buana.
Yeah, you may have seen them, but probably they didn't come from members of this association, because
some
the association...
of these ones are from very big organizations, global ones, Buana.
Yeah, or maybe you have
operating
seen
in Kenya, Buana.
Maybe you've seen them in the past, because I mentioned it's 2019 when this code came into force. So probably previously you may have seen them, but today you will not see this because of the ethical code. As I said, the ethical code also describes how we even carry out trials, because that's also an important area, ethical conduct of trials, ensuring we respect patients. It also talks about how we interact with patient organizations in an ethical way, and of course ensuring autonomy of patients. It talks about how we conduct educational meetings and conferences that you mentioned, to ensure that these are not seen as incentives, but rather as educational for educational purposes. And practitioners like this because it gives them autonomy, and they can make decisions without pressure from any side. And now that you mentioned that we want to extend this further is that we are working and in the course of this month, between 26th and 27th of this month, CAPI, in collaboration with the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Association, it's called IFPMA, will be holding a big conference in Nairobi on those dates. And the purpose is to discuss, one is to discuss the ethical standards in the pharma industry and how we can lift them further. And then the second day is to sign a landmark collaboration consensus framework, the first one in Africa, I must say, to put all stakeholders. So with pharma on one side, there's the hospital associations on the other side, there's the professional associations, meaning doctors, nurses, clinical officers, and all practitioners, putting them in one table. And of course, also having oversight from other independent bodies and also representing the voice of the patient to come together and say, ladies and gentlemen, can we in Kenya have a common language when it comes to ethical practice? Because we do not need to wait for things to go terribly wrong or to read what we see in news in some other countries. Unfortunately, even the quality of medicines in some countries where patients have been harmed, including children, then we don't want to get there. Then we say, now can we have something? No. We want to do this proactively, get the entire healthcare industry together and say, can we have a common language of ethical practice for the sake of patient safety?
Okay. It's a good initiative that you're taking. We'll question why you're taking it in a bit. It's 9:30. Daktari. Dr. Jack Kileba is from the Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry. We're talking about promoting ethical conduct. And there's a code of practice that's been developed by CAPI that is now being spread and being sensitized to other players in the sector on how best to make sure that you protect the health of patients and you operate ethically. Why medics are rejecting gifts from medical suppliers.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Dr. Jack Kileba from the Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry, talking about code of practice, looking at gifting and saying gifting is not good because, you know what, you're trying to influence a medical practitioner to remember to prescribe this kind of medication to a patient. It may not be a good thing to do, but you're allowed to to create awareness, of course, because you have this new product in the market. You've got to create awareness among the medics that they can know that this is available and this is how it go to know about it. Is it wrong to produce calendars? And gift them to hospitals?
Yeah, so for the members of CAPI, they want to walk away from all forms of incentives or reminders that could be looked at as gift, because really it is if you look at it, some of these costs that are to be borne by the hospital itself, you're offsetting the cost, because if you're a big hospital and with 200 rooms, you may want to put 200 calendars in all the rooms, right? And that's a cost to the hospital. So if you want to take that and absorb that cost, then we think it's not ethical. So we walk away from those kind of situations. There's
obviously a danger that has been seen, and that's why these standards or requirements have been put in place. What are those dangers that we're talking about?
Yeah, so probably to answer that, I can talk about patient safety in its entirety, then we probably focus on this specific one. So when you talk about safety of patients, and talking about Kenya is really safety of all of us, because we've all been sick at some point. We will be sick in the future. It's almost guaranteed because we're humans. And you realize when you fall ill, you go to healthcare facilities for attention. And it is this sector whereby we're with you when you're born. In fact, even before you're born, because everyone's mother needs to be attended to before that time, and then throughout life, and even until you go to your maker. So this is a sector that is with you from cradle to grave. So it's such importance that safety has to be built within it. And when you look at safety, there are many aspects of safety. One, if you look at the practitioners, they need to be trained and qualified and licensed. So that's number one in terms of ensuring safety, because you need to be seen by someone actually who knows what they're doing.
Yep.
The second aspect of safety is, let's say, the hospital or clinic setup. They need to have proper procedures that ensure safety of patients. For instance, if you go to the hospital, you realize you're given a number, and sometimes if you're admitted, you're given a tag. This ensures that you are properly identified, because you don't want a situation where it was Ndu who was to get the procedure, but then Eric gets the procedure. And this has happened as errors in other places. So also, when you come to the hospital, we also don't want you to, you came with this problem, but then you catch an infection in the hospital, right? So you have to put safety measures that you don't get these problems. We also have to have safety in the procedures themselves. If you're getting an injection, it has to be safe. The equipment being used, the needle, the syringes. So safety is huge in all this regard, and including now the medicines you take as well. They have to be safe in the sense that they're being used for what they should be used for, right? Because you could take a medicine that is, it is not safe if you're taking given a medicine that is for something else. Yeah, it's only safe if it is for the purpose it is meant for. And the second aspect is that if you have any form of reaction out of this, is there a system to support, first of all, identifying this issue that you had a drug reaction and taking actions to correct it, or prevent, of course, and correct it. And of course, the other one is safety is also ensuring that healthcare professionals have all the knowledge they need regarding that medication to be able to give it safely. Right. So, and that is the aspect where now we come in and you ask, why are we talking about it? After all, it is in that context of we have to look at safety in its entirety. And us in the pharmaceutical industry, I've decided to do our part of this to ensure that the safety of medicine from the laboratory when we're investigating the molecules to when we first test it in humans. It has to be in a safe environment and controlled environment. And then we expand the trials to a bit more people now. We test it in a bigger number of people. And finally, when we find it is working as it should and it is safe for human use, then we go to the government to file for approval. And the government with its agencies have to vet this whole process and vet the medicine and say, okay, it is safe for human use. And from that time, then there's also the actual the aspect of manufacturing or production. It has to be safe as well, using the highest possible standards to ensure quality, that it reaches the end user in being a safe product to consume. And all that is part of ethics, because you need to act ethically to go above what the law prescribes for you to really create this ecosystem of safety of the products you use. And that is part of the ethics, because one of the ethos is care, and we do care in terms of quality of our products. And that's why this is important.
There's a lot of regulation in your sector, right? Just like you've said, all these steps that you've talked about where safety is required, there are agencies that ensure that this safety is actually adhered to. That means that there are agencies that develop the safety protocols and standards, and then they come to enforce them. Even in your area, like you're saying, when you're doing the trials and all, you have to get permission and authority to conduct these trials. After you've conducted the trials, you've got to prove that this is safe, and then you get authority to then produce en masse this medication for public use. Those exist in the country. It's a good thing that you hear that the industry is actually taking a step ahead on self-regulation. But does that self-regulation, does all this work that you're doing in self-regulation show gaps in these institutions that should be doing regulation of the industry? Is it as a result of those institutions not being fast enough? Or is it because you are trying to... No, first answer that question. I'll ask the second bit.
I can answer it. Yes, there are standards set, and there are bodies, agencies, government agencies that check on these, that of course, pronounce what the standards are and require compliance to these standards. And we respect all these and we follow those guidelines to the letter. I would not say that they are failed. I know these are agencies that work around the clock to ensure the safety of Kenyans, and they do all that they can to ensure that this is done. But as I said, sometimes probably when issues do arise, sometimes it could be individual players who did not play by the book, and it's not really an industry-wide problem.
Because the regulators are very active and proactive all the time. When you see the industry being this vigorous in self-regulation, you always ask yourself, what are they trying to preempt? By owning the conversation and shaping the conversation in a certain direction, of course you'll shape a conversation in a direction that favors the industry. There's no industry that is going to shoot itself in the foot. So what are you preempting here? So that then by the time the regulator comes, you say, but
we're already in place.
I mean, we have already said this, but you left a loophole somewhere for yourself. I'm basically just throwing the darts at you and saying, this is not 100% out of the goodness of your heart.
Eric, you have a very interesting theory, I must say, to explain the situation. You have to look at it from the face value. And the face value is that the industry we play in is important, it's so critical, and it's sensitive because these are human lives. So there is the moral responsibility that the industry also bears because, as you're saying, you may not expect the industry to act away from its interest, but really the interests of the industry are aligned with the patient's interest. That is the good thing. It's one of the industries where the interests of the industry are fully aligned with the consumer's industry as well as the other players, because what do? We innovate, and for every innovation that comes out of this industry, lives are saved or lives are prolonged or the quality of life is improved. So it is a unique industry, and as you said in the proverb about the village where you don't come from, the chicken may have teeth. So it is similar, really, in our industry, and these are the teeth I'm describing, that in our industry, really, our chicken do have teeth because it's quite unique, and the heavy responsibility of taking care of another human makes us think again about our practices. Every so often, you realize, I mentioned about the conference that we have. It's an international conference taking place on the 26th and 27th of this month with players from across Africa and the globe. With executives, from our industry in Kenya participating, is something we want to do. This is the first one, but it's something we want to do periodically. To put all people on the table and say, okay, we don't have any immediate problem that we have right now, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be thinking about potential problems and prevent them before they happen. Because as I said earlier, we don't want a crisis to happen in terms of maybe patient safety, and then now we wake up and we are running helter-skelter trying to create the ecosystem.
How do you police one another? How do you make sure that everybody abides by the code?
Yeah, good question. So this is a voluntary membership. CAPI, Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry, is a voluntary membership. So we have about 30 members. I must say there are also a good number of pharmaceutical companies that are not part of this. And if you want to know the members of CAPI, you can go to capi.org and you'll be able to see who the members are. So this is a self-governing body, self-regulating body of the willing. People who have said, yes, we're operating, but we want to raise the ethical standards in our country. So how do we do this? So we come together, we've set we've created the association, and there is a secretariat that runs the affairs, and there are standards that should be met, and members do sign to abide to all these ethical standards, because most of these standards are actually global, because we want to raise our country to that level. So the regulation is self-regulation, but we do have a secretariat that of course ensures these things are implemented.
Okay, I'm coming back then now to the practice. I'm not saying now medicine to become medical doctors, but medicine, pharmaceuticals that are actually then, used in country, regardless of jurisdiction. and now saying, looking at those challenges that you've talked about and some of the dangers that lie there in not providing complete patient protection, what would you say beyond this, not receiving of gifts, because that seems to be one of the hinges. What beyond that needs to be instituted to make sure that there's actual patient protection? A lot of times when we talk about the abuse of drugs, we look at it from the side of the patient. Misdiagnosis could come from the side of the medical practitioner, but then also abuse of over-the-counter medication and things like that. What beyond this could actually be brought in for this total patient protection that we talk about?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that question, though. So from the patient aspect, I look at it from the patient aspect and from the pharma industry aspect. So from the patient, it is important that you visit a credible practitioner. That is number one. You need to do that. The second one is you talked about the abuse of certain medicines at the and converting prescription into over the counter. So it is important you visit a qualified pharmacist or pharmaceutical technologist or someone qualified to practice pharmacy. Second, it is important to visit a pharmacy that is registered by the government through the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, because they are regulated and they usually post their registration numbers on the wall. So it's important that you visit a credible and registered outlet, pharmacy outlet, because that is where your safety will be guaranteed. And in case of an issue, you'll have recourse. Third, it's important to ensure that you're taking medicines that are registered for use here. Because the government does register the medicines that are used in the country. So it's important that the medicines you're taking are registered for use here. Because you may take a medicine that is not meant for this environment, and whereas it may have the same name as the name that you could have expected to see, it may not be safe for you for various reasons. I can give an example. One is climatic zones. You see, we are right at the equator. Temperatures are different. And if you take medicine that is coming from South Africa, for instance, downwards or upwards, Europe, if it's not the same climatic zone, it has not been manufactured for that climatic zone. So it may not work as it should work, and it is not safe for you. The other aspect is medicines that are not even labeled in the language that you understand. So if you get a medicine labeled in Arabic, I know only a very small portion of our population speak Arabic or any other language, then how then will you read the instructions? How will you know what to do when things are not correct? So that's why medicines needs to be in a jurisdiction, and it's a part of a safety measure. Really, is not anything else. It's a safety measure. So there is that aspect of what the patient can do, and then what is the industry doing? Again, to have that total overview of safety of patients. So when it comes to pharma industry, and speaking for the members of CAPI, is the high standard of quality of medicines that we provide. These are medicines that meet all global standards, including what is called Good Manufacturing Practice, GMP. This is a high level standard of medicine that goes, so all the medicines, and I can speak for these member companies, all the medicines that they avail to the public have gone through a rigorous process of quality to ensure that they are safe for use. And it is a requirement that members of our association do meet those standards.
I've got two questions, but it's that time to give the 2,000 bob worth of airtime. Caesar Antonio is the winner. What has he said?
Caesar Antonio says, Airtel Money has changed my social life in a way that when I buy credit via Airtel Money, I get bonus airtime, which I use to talk with more friends. Plus, whenever I pay bills for free, I save some coins.
Congratulations, Caesar. So Caesar gets 2,000 bob worth of Airtel airtime. We'll be in touch with you to let you know how you are going to get that airtime. Dr. Jack Kileba from the Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry is with us in the studio on this Healthy Friday. Daktari, whenever we talk about the pharmaceutical industry in this country, many people don't know whether they are companies that actually manufacture drugs from within the boundaries of the Republic of Kenya. Are there such companies that actually manufacture drugs locally? Or do we just see companies that are distributing drugs that have been manufactured from elsewhere?
Okay. Yeah, good question. The ideal situation is to be able to, of course, to have our manufacturing facilities here as well. As you know, manufacturing is a big agenda for the government. There have been challenges with manufacturing. I think it's not news to anyone in our country. Cost of production and many other issues that affect manufacturing. So really, when that is, everyone hopes that that is agenda will continue being on top of every government that comes to our country, so that eventually we become a developed country with developed manufacturing processes. So that said, there are some medicines that are manufactured here, and but the biggest portion of medicine consumed in our country is usually imported.
Okay.
That is a fact, and it's the same in many African countries.
President William Ruto has said that he'd like to see the manufacture of drugs locally, the development of the local pharmaceutical industry. What would that require? What would the industry need for it to be able to actually produce medicine from here?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Yeah, that can happen. It can happen. It will require many things. One is capacity in terms of professional capacity. So our training institutions and our universities and colleges need to be able to train industrial scientists and engineers who can be able to undertake that scope of work, because it's highly specialized. Then there also need to be government incentives to enable business environment to be able to do this in terms of funding. Funding gap is a challenge in Africa. In terms of regulation, so regulations need to be those that support these kind of businesses. Cost of production, including power and cost of land, and transportation needs to be developed, because when you manufacture, you need to find a way of taking it to the market, including exporting. So all this needs to be addressed. And then, of course, the regulation. The regulation also need to be in place to support this, and having bodies that again enforce this. Because when you start doing manufacturing, by the nature of its undertaking, it makes sense to manufacture in large volumes that you can consume in your country, but also export. And if you're going to export, then there are high standards you have to meet.
Sounds like a lot needs to happen.
A lot needs to be done.
But it can happen.
It can happen.
It can happen.
Okay. Let's see. The president says, and it would make a lot of sense if we were able to support a local manufacturing. I'm saying this on the back of news recently that one of the biggest farmers that's been operating in the country is actually moving some of its business to other parts of Africa and the world. So you want to see all these things being done locally. Let's get manufacturing happening in the country. Thank you very much, Dr. for joining us. Dr. Jack Kileba from the Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry. So what should we watch out for on this at the end of this month?
Yeah, so at the end of this month, between the dates of 26th and 27th, the association, together with international partners, including the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Associations, will have a big conference bringing in stakeholders in the entire industry, including not only pharma, but also bringing in the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, together to discuss ethical standards in our country with an aim of enhancing patient safety. So watch out for this event.
Asante sana.